Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your agreeable host, Scott Baughman, and joining me is my original podcast co-pilot, Mr. Derrick Marsh. Derrick, how are you on this somewhat frigid winter evening?
I'm doing good, sir. It's we got a little bit more snow again here in Lexington, central Kentucky area. That started early this morning as I woke up. But luckily it was done by this afternoon. We probably got another 1, maybe 2 inches, but it was light snow. So it was real easy to brush, and it's already been melted off on the roads and everything, which is good
Okay, good.
because I get to, even though we're supposed to get like into the mid-teens tomorrow in temperature, I need to fly out to Atlanta, so that way I can at least have a clean runway as I take off tomorrow afternoon.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. And someone else who is glad that snow hasn't impeded his upcoming travel plans for this Martin Luther King Day weekend that we are recording upon. That is our very own Dave Filcloni, Mr. Miracle, the gooey chewy man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Nathan Miracle. Nathan, you're at points unknown.
That's right. I am actually in Tennessee today. I've taken a trip to see my parents. And so I got caught up in the same snow that Derek did, just a little bit south, but similar situation. Snowing this morning. It hasn't melted off, but it didn't really stick to the roads in the first place. So fortunately, it looks like I should be able to get home tomorrow.
Wait, you have parents? I could have sworn I remembered cloning you from. Those are implanted memories. Yes, you have parents who love you very much. They're
It's the
totally
Truman
your
Show.
parents. Well, we're not here to discuss clones because that was more like Star Wars The Bad Batch. We're here to discuss the finale, possibly the series finale of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. But of course, it is officially Star Wars Skeleton Crew episode number 8, which is The Real Good Guys. And I consider all of us to be real good guys, so this totally makes sense for us to be recording a podcast about it, right?
It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
sometimes I
All
like
right.
to play the devil's advocate bad guy, so that's okay.
Yes, right. Every story is only as good as its most interesting villain or something like
That's
that.
fact. That is a fact.
Yeah. And speaking of which, we got to see an interesting side of Judd Nanawood, who I much more affectionately refer to as Crimson Jack, here in Skeleton Crew, episode 8. I really thought that we were going to have a bigger fight moment amongst him and the rest of the characters. And I also thought we'd get one other lightsaber wielding character to come and oppose him. Didn't necessarily happen. We had an interesting finale. I enjoyed the fact, speaking, from a broad overview standpoint here, I enjoyed the way they wrapped it up for the most part. And I'm glad that we didn't have any overt cliffhanger because, guys, I really don't think we're getting a season 2 of Skeleton Crew. But we'll talk about that a little bit more as we dive deeper into the questions. There's my broad overview. Nathan, what's your overview view from 30,000 feet? Your view from the Great Barrier when it comes to this episode of Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, quite frankly, largely the same as yours. I thought this was a good conclusion to the series because I agree. I don't think we're going to get a season 2. They clearly did not make this with the idea of having a season 2 in mind. And frankly, I think it's better if we don't get a season 2. Not that I didn't enjoy the series, but sometimes having a season 2 of something just kind of ruins the magic of the one season.
Yeah, you can go to the well too often. Derek, your overall 30,000 foot view of episode 8?
Yeah, obviously to let the listeners know, we do have a specific question on how it wrapped up itself that we'll get into in a little bit. But from a 30,000 view, I thought it was okay. I thought it did, as we get into some of the likes and dislikes, I thought there was some really good parts to this. Really enjoyed it, again, from start to finish. This is definitely a very enjoyable series that I could definitely find myself rewatching again at some point, which is good. I feel that's hit or miss sometimes with the Disney Star Wars stuff. So when you have something that you feel like, yeah, I mean, will I go out and necessarily purposely rewatch it like I've done some Andor, Rogue One, Mandalorian, season 1, season 2 type deal? I'm not saying I will, but you never know, right? It's kind of one of those things where it definitely brought some nostalgic feels, and I thought it did really good. But overall, I like the episode, and I'm ready to jump in and let's talk some deep dive on it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and do our traditional 5 questions. Although, um, well, yeah, we do have 5. I was going to say I think we only have 4 this time, but we did decide to split one up because we had a little bit more to talk about. So, Nathan, we'll start out with you. What did you like best about this episode?
I had one particular moment that I liked best, and I think a lot of people agreed with this. I am a level 7 systems coordinator.
Yes. Yeah, that was good.
So proud of that. It's like so meaningless. Like no one else in the galaxy
What
cares.
does this even
Like
mean?
no clue what it means, but it meant something to him, and it means something on Atten, and he did whatever it was that he needed to do and could do it because he was that good at being uh, essentially an analyst. Because
Yeah.
that's what everybody wants to be on this planet. It goes all the way back to that first episode. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an analyst. Like, do you? Well, apparently on this planet, yes, those are the rock stars.
I'd like to work as an actuary. Really? I enjoyed that too. And I like the fact that he said it with such gusto, and it was so much meaningless bureaucracy, but he was so
It
happy that
was.
his skill was crucial. It really reminded me of that scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where Arthur tells Ford Prefect, "Don't worry, I'm British. I know how to queue." And he's like going to save the day by lining up correctly at the Vogon
Yep.
bureaucracy office,
It reminds me actually of a web comic, Order of the Stick. There's one particular scene where the big bad guy, Zycon, he's a lich, is monologuing basically, and he tells one of the good guys, through all of my experience, what I've realized is that power equals power, and that doesn't really make sense sometimes, but occasionally power comes in the form of a +8 perception check, and he finds the good guy. Sometimes what you need is like random, never would have thought this would be the thing that saves the day, but apparently systems coordination is what we needed.
Yep. All right, Derek, what did you like best about this episode?
I mean, it's definitely part of echoing what Nathan talked about, right? There was definitely some cute comedy pieces and stuff like that. But what I really liked was that you got the parents involved with this episode finally, right? It was the point of, we had kind of seen their kids, and their interaction in the first couple of, really first episode. And then a little bit later on, right, as they're trying to worry about it and kind of go about their ways, and then you get them actually having a chance to interact with them. You have them a chance for a couple of them to redeem themselves kind of in the eyes. But I also like that it kind of gave everyone's skill set that we had been kind of watching these characters grow with a little bit, get that opportunity to redisplay that skill that they recently learned, right? I really enjoyed where I felt that, it kind of gave a good climax, end the story for that character and their development, and where they've been taking us on this 8 episode journey. And so I thought, like I said, that was really nice, where I felt that, hey, we did a nice job kind of putting a bow on some of this character development and getting the parents involved. And yeah, I was absolutely on Wim's dad. I love the part where they're doing the hover bikes, and he's like, hover bikes, and then he's out there riding with them, and then he's the one who got most excited when they made the jump, and all that stuff. And then I obviously liked it when Neel fell behind, right, because he's obviously got the short stubby legs, so he's always the one that falls behind. But it was almost like it was purposely planned. It worked out because then he could do what he needed to do in and getting the turret gun and shooting him down, right. And
Yeah.
I liked how there were moments in this where like I said, it did a pretty good job of explaining, okay, the Attons and we got the pirates to come in, but then there was a reason for the rebels to show up and actually have a firefight. I did like how they were, able to do that. I wish we got a little bit more action. That would have been a little bit cooler, especially once the Rebel Alliance made it in. And then you got your moment with KB and Smee to shine as well, like I said. And then you really got a moment for Fern and her mother to connect, because I think they probably, Wim's dad to some degree did a really good job of shining out with this moment, but you could really see where Fern's mom struggled the most with those out of order chaos type deal. And she finally kind of had that moment. So like I said, I thought it was really nice where they did a good job of, like I said, incorporating the two main parents and going through with that.
Yeah. My favorite moment of this episode, real short and simple, short and sweet, kids on bikes. We had this whole concept of this is Star Wars, kids on bikes, as kind of the announcement when they were like, it's going to be the Star Wars version of Stranger Things, which second season Stranger Things, when it was, in my opinion, at its best, was kids on bikes trying to save the whole town, the whole world, basically, while their parents all thought they were crazy or just, goofing around. And so that's exactly what we had when all the kids got on the bikes because the power went out and none of the other speeders would work on their tracks. Poor Rex, Captain Rex from Star Tours, he was driving that bus and he just got blown up during the pirate attack. Like, not only did he get powered down, he got blasted to pieces while he was a sitting duck. But then the kids were like, yeah, we'll take our hover bikes. And yeah, like Derrick said, I loved when Wim's dad was able to make the jump and he was like, all of a sudden he was 12 years old again. And it was like, this was great. And they're like, Dad, come on, because they have to scold him to get back on task because he's too distracted by being kids on bikes. But yeah, sometimes you tell a really good story when you stick to your premise and you don't get distracted by a bunch of extraneous details or extra little, side missions. And we sometimes complain about filler episodes and whatnot. And this series didn't really have much of that. They focused on the whole thing about, the kids are in trouble. They're trying to save their planet, trying to find their way back to their planet so that they can save it. And, it was Star Wars kids on bikes. And the hover bike scene here in the finale really stuck the landing, in my opinion, if you'll pardon the pun. And they focused on, we're going to have our kids do their mischievous thing and save the day. And it was great. All right. Well, time for question number 2. What did you like the least about this episode? I'll go first here. I wanted a little bit more resolution about who Crimson Jack really was. How did he come about to get his force powers? And then also I wanted more resolution about how did Captain Renaud actually come up with this whole plan of stealing one of the Aten armored car starships, basically, so he could sneak in and out or, pass by the barrier and have this whole heist. Because not only have we found out that he did, just like the, tall tales or folklore of pirates mentioned, he found the legendary Aten. He had this whole plan about how to rob the mint, and even stole the ship necessary for his plan. How did he pull all this stuff off? And my other complaint about no resolution regarding Captain Renaud, we still don't know what Captain Renaud looked like, because I thought he was going to be the supervisor. Clearly that turned out not to be the case. The supervisor was more a giant Dalek from Doctor Who. I'm just kidding. He was a droid. But, and then
complete
now,
with British voice actor.
Exactly. But now we won't know, or I guess we may in some other media, or we'll get a season 2 and it'll be like a prequel of who was Captain Renaud and how did he find Aten and come up with this whole scheme, which that'd be cool. But the fact that we didn't get answers to those questions was probably my least favorite part of the episode. And also the aforementioned, yes, there is a fight in the control room between Crimson Jack and the rest of the adults and kids, but nobody ever shows up to actually do, a big saber duel. Maybe that would have been too violent for a kids show, but we already had some fairly violent moments in this series.
Plenty of people died, so it's not like...
Yeah, plenty of people got killed, although none of them quite gruesomely, and a lot of them died off screen. Like the pirates that got eaten up by the acid pool on the spa planet that used to be Skull Mountain we know they got killed by the acid, but we didn't actually see that happen, and it was like behind a door.
Well,
off
same
screen.
thing with Brutus, right? It was a close up of Jod shooting him, but you didn't see
Yep.
it, and other than Brutus just laying there limp afterwards. So
Right. Yeah. And even the limp body wasn't all burnt to a crisp like sometimes you are when you get blasted in Star Wars.
Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, yeah.
Right. Right. Although I assume that they didn't get blasted. I assume they got burned by the fire, but some people do get like Greedo, bzzz, right? So there's plenty of ashen roadie in there. Anyway, Derek, what did you dislike the most about this episode?
There was a couple of things. It was actually the first one would be pertaining to my compliment of what I liked about it. I wish they would have actually had Neel's and KB's parents a bit more involved in this, just because I felt like that would have, again, I liked what they did with women, Fern's parents. So I really would have liked that if they would have gotten a chance other than just being kind of civilians on standby and watching everything going on. Obviously, KB's mom basically kind of, did their, support thing on the comm, but I really wish they would have been the ones in the pilot seat or something like that to help KB. I really would have liked Neel's parents, which again, I get like the mom has to watch the little babies. But then to me, I thought like Neel's dad, because he's the big elephant in the room, would have been the one to like charge the door down or something. Or to your point, would have been the one to come in like he's the muscle, right? Like he could have at least held his own outside of a, lightsaber less Jod, right? You know what I mean? So I would have preferred that a little bit. But my biggest gripe was actually ended up being, the fact that we had a cameo from Kevin in this. And what I mean by Kevin is for those that, watch She-Hulk, right? K.E.V.I.N. Which was, the pun for Kevin Feige, but basically, or the acronym that they're using to make it sound like Kevin Feige. The fact that we got, just that was just an Overlord droid, which I was hoping that once I liked the part where Jod just shuts everything down by just, hitting it with his lightsaber. That was great, right? Like, I'm just sick of this, right? And then it just shuts everything down. That was another great moment. But then it just underneath that wasn't anybody, wasn't the wizard that we were hoping for.
Yes.
To the point of connecting something in there, right?
The droid definitely gave off the, floating head of Oz thing. It was even a giant head, droid head, but still. But then nothing. There was nothing behind. There is no wizard. There is no guy behind the curtain.
Yeah, and then I didn't care for the last part was the big reveal, because now I'm confused because they kept referring to them as the Old Republic and the way everything was going down. But then they have this point in there where the droid made a point that the last emissary came by, told them that all the Jedi were traitors and bad guys.
Not the last emissary, just the last transmission. The last transmission from.
Okay, well, either way though, but that to me means that they were still aware, like they would have still been getting the droids at least, whether they shared that with the people and whether they made the droid, a logarithm to decide to tell the people, but they would have still been going through multiple things. Like they would have known about the collapse of the Old Republic, the High Republic, the Grand Republic, and then the fall of the Grand Republic into the Empire at that point. When the Jedi,
I don't think so.
I think our major issue here. Let me put us back onto panel. I think our major issue here is when we all talk about the Old Republic, we mean stuff from BioWare and Knights of the Old Republic or the MMO. I think in this
and
show,
that's fine if it's just the High Republic.
They just mean the Grand Republic. They mean the Republic before the one that we now currently call in the Mandoverse the New Republic. They're just using Old Republic to differentiate from New Republic, and that's it. And
but
so
why would they call it Old Republic credits though? That's my thing.
Because
it's not from the New Republic.
The New Republic, yeah. So it's Republic credits
it's
from
still the Grand Republic.
Of
though.
The Clone
they would have reprinted money at that point when the Grand Republic took over, wouldn't they?
You would think, but I don't know that they do. It's kind of like when I was trying to figure that out when we first realized that At-Atin was a mint, and I was saying, Would this be like finding Confederate dollars? Why would they be worth anything? Because that government no longer exists. But I think we're over.
But then the Grand Republic would be worth nothing either. No matter what republic, to your point, Scott, nothing would be
except
worth a lot.
for the only one that actually had monetary value at this moment in our time, the Mandoverse window, would be New Republic credits. So I agree with you, Derek. I don't understand why Jod and everybody was so excited to find Old Republic credits, other than, as Nathan mentioned in that episode of the podcast, they have actual like gold.
Yeah, it's gold. Yeah, it's the material itself, right? It's a rare material that's worth it, which, like I said, is perfectly fine. But again, that's the problem of poor writing, where they're confusing us and not just giving us the dialogue or the excerpts or whatever we need to clarify that. Because to me, that all I'm trying to say is that to me, it's supposed to be this lost city, but it's really not that old then, to me, in my opinion. Like, I'm thinking this is 1,000 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not that old. It's not that old.
Obviously, it can't be at this point.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what's disappointing. Like, to me, it should have been like 1,000 years old. That's why, whatever the Captain Wren that was trying to build the ship and try to find it. Like, to me, that was supposed to be legend stories, right? And it's like that was not like Jod knew the guy, right? Like, oh, he found it. Like, he was the one I met just 2 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, because then to me, the ship just should have been, undercover. Like, just like I said, to me, just the timeline of them saying that, it just made me upset, because I'm like, well, then that's really only 25 years from then. The last time that happened, if you think about it, right? Because
it's at least 25 years. It could be more than that.
No, yeah, but I don't think it's 100 years though.
Well, no, because you have 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and you have Return of the Jedi to A New Hope was 7 years, so you're at 12 years right now. And then between A New Hope and that was 18 years, so 30 years. You're looking at 30 years minimum when they would have received the message that the Jedi are traitors.
Okay, but they never received a message that the Empire took the place of the Republic. As far as the supervisor on At-Aten is concerned, the Republic is still in power,
and that's
they
fine.
Just never got a message.
But I'm just saying, though, but up to that point, they were still getting that type of information, is what I'm saying. It just felt like it's a silly loophole for plot armor's sake to say, oh, Jod's a bad guy because he claims to be a Jedi. And it just didn't.
I don't see how this is a plot hole.
It just means that the time frame is different than what we had been theorizing about earlier this season.
Yeah, because we thought At-Aten may have been out there for thousands of years, and it turns out that that's not the case, but it still could have been hundreds of years. Now, the supervisor has been getting messages more recently than that, but the last message they got was, well, I'll talk about that one when we get into connections to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy. But it could still be that the planet has been hidden away for hundreds of years, and they're making.
And most importantly, to Derek's point, the supervisor knew a whole lot more about what was happening in the galaxy at large that he just did not tell the people.
Absolutely. But notice that nobody on At-Aten calls it the Old Republic. They just refer to it as the Republic. The people who call it Old Republic credits are the pirates. Correct. So it's only the people from outside At-Aten who recognize that, hey, this stuff is from before the Empire. Yeah. Because the general population on At-Aten doesn't even know that the Empire exists. I'm not sure that the supervisor did either.
Yeah. I guess in the concept of when people live hundreds of years old in the Star Wars universe, 100 years old is not a long time in this galaxy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
to me, I think it should have been more thousands of years. To me, would have made it more of that feel, because, like I said, when Wookiees lived to 200, 300, 400 years old, some of the other races live 200 years old. It's like that's just one person's generation, and and I'm not saying anything wrong with what you're saying, Nathan, but I'm just saying, to me, it's why I didn't like it, because to me, I felt like in the Star Wars universe, I want something a little bit older that would have made it felt like, oh, this is like a really big deal. I don't know, because to me, it's just, again, and we'll answer more of the questions, but that just, to me, didn't put the nice bow on it, because to me, it made more questions, right? So go ahead.
Yeah. All right, Nathan, what did you dislike most about this episode?
All right. Well, this is kind of a nitpicky thing, but I had predicted that Jod was going to actually be a good guy in the end, and he was going to save all the children from the other pirates, and I was wrong. And I don't like being wrong. So
And he's a jerk, and I don't like him.
he is.
That's why I liked him, because he stayed true. He's a pirate.
He's probably a better character for it. Yes, it's better for the story. But my personal prediction was wrong. And as we know with Star Wars, if my personal prediction is wrong, that means I must hate it. At least that's how a lot of Star Wars fans approach the fandom. Please don't approach the fandom that way.
No.
Don't pull.
I agree with Derek. I like that we did not have the traditional redemption equals death story arc for,
and
John.
that's why he didn't die.
It is,
and that's why he didn't die. Yes, he's still alive.
But I will say, I do think that he did not want to hurt the children.
Yes.
He could have, at pretty much any given time, just killed everybody else involved and won, and chose not to do that. So just because he's a bad guy doesn't mean he is totally and completely and irredeemably
He's not
evil.
a bad guy, as John Keith would say.
Yeah, he's a bad guy, but just not like totally. He's not
He's
a
a jerk. He's not an a-hole, is what you're trying to say.
Right.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe anybody is 100%. No.
Yeah. All right. Question number 3, and Nathan's got one he's been sitting on for the past 5 minutes here now. So go ahead, Nathan. What connections did you draw to the rest of Star Wars Galaxy?
I've got a few. So I'm going to start with the one big one, and then I'll see if you guys pick up a couple of the others. And if not, I'll circle back around to them. But the big one is the last message we got from the Republic is that the Jedi are traitors. And that message was sent out during the episode 3. It was Order 66. The Jedi are traitors, kill on sight, don't let any of them survive. So we didn't get an actual Order 66 scene, but we did get a reference to Order 66. And that is apparently the last message that they got from the Republic.
Yeah. That was really cool. I enjoyed that the supervisor essentially turned the tables on Jod when he was all like, so which one are you lying about, being the emissary or being a Jedi? Dun, dun, dun.
I did love that it's the classic, we've confused the computer with this logic conundrum that the computer cannot figure out and will cause the computer to explode. But this ain't Star Trek. It's not going to work, Captain Kirk. This droid is like, yeah, no, you're lying about something. What is it? It's one or the other. Voiced by Stephen Fry, by the way. That was epic.
That makes it even cooler.
Yeah,
he was still British there. To your point, Scott.
Yeah, not that was a connection to anything else in Star Wars, but I loved hearing his voice.
Yeah, that was excellent. All right, Derek, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
Be honest, I didn't pick up as much on this one if there was some other things. I mean, obviously that was it, right? I mean, that was my whole correlation, was going back to the announcement of the Jedi were the traitors. So Nathan hit it on there, right, with Order 66, the last transmission. Otherwise, I'm trying to think. Because we didn't get the one thing I was hoping, but we didn't, wasn't, because you could definitely see how the Obsidian Cinder had kind of the same almost thing as a Lombard class ship when they were trying to load everything onto it. And then it was kind of a reenactment a little bit about Rogue One when they're trying to basically get the ship out. And so they had the thing where it was stuck and they had to basically try to get the ship free. Trying to think what else. Not too much else, like I said.
Solo.
Or what? Solo. I'm sorry. Yeah, Solo.
Yeah, Solo.
Solo. That's what I meant. And then the other one, but to me, it's a reference to like so many other movies, which was you hit on it with E.T. With the bikes. I was hoping when they did the ramp, they're actually going to show them like the moon behind it. But we didn't get that.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously we got the Goonies version of it too, because you see instead of One-Eyed Willie's ship at the end, you get to see the Corellian Corvette come in at the end as the final shot there with Wim, and which is the same thing that you see with Sean Astin's character there at the end of Goonies. So like I said, it felt like a lot more correlation there to and then I'm trying to think.
All right, I'm taking over.
Go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
Steal mine by accident. B-Wings, baby! B-Wings show coming in, and they get to use their quad laser, or not quad laser, but point-to-point laser weapons to cut big holes into the pirate frigate there before it goes crashing into the river or the what's left of the park. Also, speaking of homages to other movies, Derek was talking about several things with E.T. and Goonies and so forth. The building that KB crashes into when she's trying to save the day with the Onyx Cinder is a geodesic dome. So while it is not exactly a Star Wars Easter egg, it is, of course, a reference to plenty of 1970s sci-fi movies like Silent Running and so on and so forth. And to my house, I was like, oh, look, Mita, it's a geodesic dome. We were having a good time about how even a starship hitting the dome head on only broke open that part of it, and the whole thing did not collapse, baby. You just take those panels out, replace them, your dome is fine. This is how these things go. Everybody should live in one of these. I'm not kidding. And so then also all the money was going to crush the children as they were talking about it right in front of the thing, which was sort of a self-referential moment to Andor, where we literally had characters crushed by money as they tried to oppose, or in this case, rob the Empire. Once again, robbing credits in Star Wars means that the credits might crush you under your own hubris. So there you go. Nothing subtle about that, which is very much in keeping with George Lucas's method of filmmaking. All right, Nathan, did we get all of the other ones that you wanted to say?
Not quite. You got most of them, though, because I was definitely going to reference the B-Wing and the credit crushing and the solo ship locking. But the one other sort of reference that we have is in Jod's backstory. We hear about his master being someone who apparently survived Order 66, but then was hunted down by presumably Inquisitors. We don't get that term, but that's clearly what was going on.
What it sounds like, yeah.
But that also means that he is a Boken Jedi, which we heard about in Ahsoka, because he talked about how there are these Force users who aren't really Jedi, who aren't fully trained, who are kind of these false Jedi, and that's what he is. But my favorite reference was definitely the getting crushed by the credits, especially because that came right at the end of the show when the credits were about to roll.
Very good. Very nice. You get 9,000 dad joke points. You would have gotten 10,000, but you're not a dad.
I'm not the one who made the joke. They clearly were going for that joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was pretty good. All right, let's move on to question 4. Which one of you guys came up with question 4?
Derek put them both. So.
Oh, all right. Okay, Derek.
Yeah,
take it away.
I just put. What did you think of the ending? Do you think it wrapped up the story very well? So, and we've kind of been hinting at that a little bit. So, which one of you guys would like to go first on that one?
I think it wrapped up the story fairly well. We didn't have a whole lot of unanswered questions, just a couple big ones, like I mentioned about, who the heck was Captain Renaud? How did he come up with this crazy plan and get all the stuff going? I would have also have liked more resolution of what's going to happen to Jod Nanawood. Obviously the X-Wing pilots are there to take him into custody like they do, because they're kind of like chips in the New Republic, because they just fly in and do stuff, but instead of having hover bikes, they have their X-Wings. But like when they get him back to New Republic HQ and they're like, yeah, he's a prisoner. He was a space pirate, also a Jedi. He was armed only with this. And so, then you're going to be, a Force user. So let's just say I expect this to be Project Paperclip levels of, sure, he was a Nazi, but he knows how to make atomic bombs. Or in this case, sure, he was a pirate, but he knows how to use the Force. So they're going to probably give Crimson Jack their special pardon and let him do stuff for the New Republic, which means that we might get no less than Jude Law showing up on some other Star Wars production in the near future set in the Mandoverse era, dealing with the fact that he was a bad guy, but he definitely got trained by a Jedi. So I kind of wanted more resolution about what is going to happen to him, because we just kind of see him standing there watching the frigate crash, and that's it. And then he
And
just,
so you're assuming he's getting captured by your logic, though.
yeah, he might not even get captured. I guess that's possible. He could get away in the fracas and the chaos. It kind of felt like the tail end of the finale for Star Trek Voyager, where you just see them cruising toward Earth because they finally made it home, but there's no answer as to those long-standing questions of what's going to happen with Chakotay and his friends who were Maquis, the obvious terrorists that were proud to be terrorists. Are they going to jail, or have they like somehow earned a reprieve because it's the stuff that happened over the past 7 years above Voyager or aboard Voyager out in Delta Quadrant? Is Captain Janeway's husband still alive? What's he going to say about all
What about the dog?
alliances?
We all care about the dog.
What's up with the dog that they had together? What's going to happen to the EMH? He's a hologram, but will he gain some kind of form of citizenship? Because I mean, he's clearly way more advanced. All right. Anyway, this is not a Star Trek podcast, but you guys get my point. We sort of had Jod standing there watching the thing crash, very much like, oh look, Voyager made it back to Earth, and roll credits. Thank you, Nathan. So anyway, that's my answer. Mostly good. Still a couple of giant questions, and maybe that's intentional because we're going to get answers in other stories.
All right. Well, I do think that it's intentional, but I don't think it's necessarily because we're going to get answers in other stories. I think it's because we're seeing this show from the viewpoint of the kids, and they don't necessarily care about those questions, and they're certainly not going to get the answers to those questions. So we're not going to get the answers to those questions either. From their perspective, those aren't important details. We, as big fans who care about all the little minutiae of Star Wars, care, but maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the same answer to our utter conundrum about why are the old Republic credits worth anything? Because they're not that old, and the government that made them, that's a very adult way of looking at a big pile of gold. If you're a
Right.
kid in a pirate story, you're all like, oh, cool, a big pile of gold. And that's really all you need to see. So, yeah. All right, Derek, what's your own answer to your question number 4?
Yeah, no, this is where I felt that it just didn't put a big nice enough bow on it, right? Like I'm with you guys where hey, it wasn't like we left this super big cliffhanger, right? Like we thinking like the way they did Acolyte, right? Like, oh, okay. Or the way we got Ahsoka, right? Like, the tensions there are, hey, we finally got at least at the end of Mando season 3, right? Like they're just chilling out at his new house, right? So like that could just be the end of it, right? Like obviously we know we're getting a movie, right? But and then even with the intent of season 1 and season 2, it kind of ended the way it could have been. It could have been, right? I mean, there was a pretty good way that they ended that because that was the way, Favreau wrote the story, was really with a complete story in season 1 and 2, right? Obviously, to your point, Scott, like we're hardcore Star Wars fans, but we just also think that way, right? So am I expecting every question answered? No, but I think the biggest lingering question for me, you hit on it, right? Like what's going to happen with At-Atten? I don't need all the story, right? But I need a little bit to say, okay, hey, because for all we know, like it's going to go into complete chaos with these people. Like you don't know, right? Like what are they supposed to do? Like because one, the barrier's gone, right? They're printing the mint still there, right? So now the Grand Republic or the New Republic, I'm sorry, has basically a gazillion dollars. So what do they do with it between now and the point of the First Order? And do they lose it all, right? Because then it doesn't. Is this happening at the same time that Ahsoka is happening, right? And we're like, people are this, and there's the Empire still doing this. Like, there's obviously the Empire's not infiltrated this place, so you don't have to worry about that, right? But to me, that's just going to become this huge war zone now because there's going to be all this Empire coming in to try and take over, right? Because if anybody hears about it, like, because now it's going to happen, I would have been nice that, like, in theory, we assume all the pirates survive, right? Because it didn't kill everybody because the ship didn't blow up. It just crashed into the water, right? So, they didn't really say any of that. But to your point with John, if they would have just had it where it would have been like just a quick, 3 to 5 minute segment on the next day, right, where the sun's up and the rebels are there and we got a little bit of dialogue talking about what's going to happen, even if it's just a high level, right, just saying, hey, here's the next steps of an adventure, right, that's going to happen with it, right, and then the parents are with the kids, because I didn't really like that either. I didn't feel like all the kids and the parents got together like we did at the end of Goonies, right, like they all had
And
one
even
focal point where they're all
and,
kind of reunited and all hugging and happy.
yeah,
And the big bad guys ended, right? And you kind of get this, the cops are there, which has got the rebels, but you just get that final, saying,
even in Goonies, when they're hugging their moms and dads and stuff, Mikey looks over and the Fratelli gang is being put in handcuffs and shoved
correct.
back in a police
Yeah.
car. Like,
Yeah.
I would have wanted that moment of we're taking Jod and the pirates and putting them on that Corellian Corvette, surrounded by a bunch of eggheads, with their blue and their white helmets and their putting laser handcuffs on them or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I would have
reading-
preferred that they didn't do Jod. They did everyone else. They did Gunther. They did everyone else. And then we got that as a end credit scene where you just see Jod do something, where he's back at the Pirate Bay thing, right? Because, obviously Smee now is a liability for all pirates because Smee's on their side, but yet he should not be. Is he going to get his mind wiped? Because really he's a droid. I mean, even though the kids care for him, but at the end of the day, he's ex Imperial, droid. He's a pirate now. Like, he should be thrown in jail, right? Like, so I just needed a couple of moments because, like, he should have been like Sloth, like, oh, you're gonna live with me now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I would have wanted something like that because really, at the end, he was just ahead, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I really kind of wanted that moment where it's like, okay, like I said, just 5 more minutes at this point. They had it so close, in my opinion, where I felt like it would have made it a closer. Like, to me, the whole series has been kind of like a steady 7.5 to 8, right? Some episodes really high on the 9, scale. But then to me, this episode was kind of more like around a 6.5 on a scale of 10, where I felt it was good. It was a lot of fun. But the way it just, there was just a couple of moments where it's just like it completed the story, but there was just a few things. Same thing with the supervisor, right? Like, there was nothing closing on that, which, like I said, they could have been like, oh yeah, that's why these droids were, out of the other 8 planets that they had, because these droids went crazy and they just like we were talking about, right? They just controlled the people because that's all a droid is, right? Something like that to kind of do that, or at least Fern's mom, like, coming a little bit more realization, because to me, she had her moment. Same thing with Wynn's dad. But then I felt like at the end, they just kind of went back to their same self. Like, they had a quick moment, but then they didn't really change, right? Like, backs up against the wall, my kid's going to die. I'll do something real quick. But then afterwards, I'm just going to go back to being a level 7 analyst, right? And it's just like, okay. So are you still going to have that relationship with Wim, or, you're going to actually, anyways, like I said, I just would have preferred that 5 more minutes of something and then a post-credit scene of Jod somewhere, that we know that he, or to your point, if he was arrested, okay, like, that's fine, right? Then that could be no different than Moff Gideon, because we all see Moff Gideon got away. So anyways, that was my point, where it was just so close. It didn't flop it, and it didn't leave cliffhangers. I was happy with that, but I really wish they just would have spent a few extra minutes on wrapping up a couple more minor plot things of what we were going to, happen really mainly to the kids and to Atten.
Yeah, totally. All right. And so now let's move on to question number 5. I think this is you once again, Derrick.
Yeah, what would you guys like to see next? If we do get these characters in this part of the galaxy, and then do you think, really, I mean, other than what's his name, I can't remember the one character that we got in season 3 of Mandalorian, but really, I mean, Vane, thank you. How do you think they could tie this part of the galaxy? Not saying it has to be the kids, obviously, but that part of the galaxy, then at Atten and all that, tie it more into Mandoverse. Right? Like, because again, you were just talking about, Scott, right? Like, there's an open book. Like, what would you guys like to see?
Okay. Nathan, what would you like to see them do?
All right. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think as far as Atten is concerned and this storyline is concerned, the reason we didn't get a lot of those questions answered is because we're seeing it from the viewpoint of the kids. And I think that story is done. So I don't really want to see us go back to that portion of it. But the pirates, there's a lot of stories that we could tell about them. So that's what I would like to see going forward, is what happens with the pirates. Do any of them escape? Are they taken custody? What happens when the First Order blows up the New Republic? Do they become First Order operatives? We see in Resistance that the First Order does use pirates as operatives. So it's not out of the question that they could start working for the First Order. Does Jod end up going to Luke's school? Does he perhaps become a Knight of Ren?
Ooh.
That I think would be the juiciest thing, but also kind of far out there.
Or is he the father of Broom Boy?
No, that's even further out there. No, I don't think so. But yeah, I think the pirates is where we have potential for more storyline here.
Yeah, I like all of your ideas. My preferred expansion of Aten, or the Skeleton Crew storyline. Again, the kids aren't necessarily involved, but in the Mandoverse, when Thrawn is here in the Prime Galaxy, one of his things that he's talking to the Imperial Remnant about is them saying, "But how are we going to afford all of your crazy ideas?" And he's all, "I have a plan about where to get money. My pirate friend told me about this place." And they go and rob what's left of Aten because the New Republic has just sort of closed all the vaults and let it sit there until they need that money as a rainy day slush fund. And so it exemplifies the ineptitude of the New Republic government once again, that they didn't do anything with this. It becomes the the Sifo Dyas of the New Republic. Nobody knew about the 85 billion credits sitting around on this planet, and they were just running the government at a deficit anyway. But Thrawn, he knows about it somehow, either a pirate contact when he gets back to the Galaxy Prime, or some other of his agents that are still operating in the Imperial Remnant had found a record of Aten's location from one of their pirate contacts. Because like Nathan was mentioning, the First Order is fine with using pirates as operatives, and I think that Thrawn is probably also going to be shown about how he and the Imperial Remnant were fine with using pirates as operatives. And so we'll get to see Aten, but we'll see it from afar. Maybe we'll see them land and start scooping their credits into some Star Destroyer, maybe the Chimera itself, just like, giant version of the Jawa suction tube from the Sandcrawler. Scrooge McDuck level of bank heist. And then they fly off. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Thrawn goes swimming in it. But no, there's no other real impact from Skeleton Crew. And it's like, if you never watched Skeleton Crew, but you're watching this Heir to the Empire story where Thrawn steals all the money, you're like, oh wow, it's a mint. That's kind of cool. And you think it may be a nod to Andor and the whole payroll heist. But really, it's a nod to Skeleton Crew. If you know, and it's fun. If you don't know, you're like, Thrawn, he's doing his logistics thing because that's how he wins battles. And then the money becomes important later in whatever Heir to the Empire story we're doing, because he uses it to pay off some important bounty hunter, like, I don't know, Fennec Shand or something like that. Or maybe a returning Vance, the cybernetic bounty hunter that we talked about from 1980s Star Wars Marvel Comics. Oh, that'd be epic as a way to bring that guy back.
Or it's how he buys an entire fleet of ships, and then he has clones that pilot those ships.
There's no Katana fleet in the current canon for him to go steal. True. So he just buys a fleet, or he's got a fleet on order, and he shows up to Corellia, and they're like, sorry, we can't release this until you pay the bill. The Empire ordered it, and then they all died, and we've just been holding it. And Thrawn is like, would this be enough money? And hands him like all the money from the mint, and they're like, sure, here you go. So yeah. Derek, what's your answer here? What would you like to see them do?
Well, there's two things I want to do. To your point, right? Like, that's where I'm thinking, like, something needs to happen to Aten, because at this point it's literally an unlimited amount of money, right? Like, they've just been producing for 30 plus years or more since the last emissary came in, right? So it's a gazillion worth of things that, like you said, and obviously the rebellion at this point, because they've disassembled all these stupid ships because they're idiots, or the New Republic, I should say. And to your point, Thrawn's going to come in and he's going to intercept something. Or let's say some of those pirates, you were saying, like, Scott, how does he find out? So some of those pirates get arrested, right? And they're taken back to Coruscant. and they're gonna go get their mind wiped or put in pain or whatever it is. And
Yeah,
then that one
yeah, yeah.
chick who killed Dr. whatever his name is, Xavier or
Dr.
whatever his
Pershing.
name. Pershing, yes. He's going to be like, oh, wait a minute. Let me tell you, this secret thing. So don't do it. Right. And she's like, oh, and then she's going to be the one that, escalates it. Right. And that'll be her cameo in the next Ahsoka movie. Right. So we get that side of things. Where like you said, he finds out, right? And then he goes and takes it. And now it's a reverse, right? Now it's the Empire doing a heist movie, right?
Yeah. It's like our dark side echo of Andor. Like, you're not robbing us of payroll, we're robbing you of the
we hold that grudge from when, Cassian robbed us,
right.
20 years ago, right? We're paying back, right? And with interest this time, because obviously that's gonna be a lot more than the Imperial credits are. But on top of that, then you could have the cameo where they're going to need a level 7 analyst to get access, and they're going to have to take Wim's dad as a hostage so he can get access to whatever level, or Fern's mom or something like that. Maybe she becomes the supervisor, right? And she's running the town now as the mayor of At-Aten, which it still find it weird that At-Aten apparently is a whole entire planet, but all it is just one little tiny city. Like, there's nothing else on this planet.
That just means they live in the capital. I feel like there's more people there.
Yeah, but
for that many vaults to be in the core of the planet with all the money, you got to think that there's copies of that city all over the place. They're just making more credits.
You would think,
and they've got to be
they don't explain that
food somehow. They don't need to explain everything.
Well, maybe they're like Mad Max. Maybe they're the ones that hold it, but maybe they
Credit Town, Food Town, Bullet Town.
Yeah. Hover speeder bike town, right?
We don't even use solid projectiles in our guns anymore. It doesn't matter. We've been instructed to make bullets until we die, so that's what we're going to do.
You misunderstand. We make bullet points. We put them on all of the matrices.
We make those weird X-shaped thingy-maboops that they were making in Andor. We don't know what they're used for until the after credit scene, where they're there for the one little segment of the Death Star. We just need a blue million of them. Yeah.
So, but anyways, that would be the one for that portion. But then the other section I want to talk about would be Jod himself. Like, whether he makes, like I said, I still think it would have been great that we would have gotten a cameo of him escaping, because like I said, they would have done that. And then that's when they have to pull in Mando, because they're looking for him. Right.
Yeah,
and he would have gotten the puck, right? Like, oh, this guy knows where this At-Aten's at, right? Because really at this point, it's only just the New Republic handful of people that got it. Now, obviously they're gonna, tell everybody, and then that's gonna become a new thing. But they're gonna be some type of, we need this guy hunted down, blah blah blah, and that would have been, the cool way of introducing him either in the movie, and that's where he makes his cameo, or season 4 of the Mandalorian, and that's you got a nice quote unquote villain where and he's going to be force sensitive, right? Which is something that can counterbalance Grogu at this point, right? Because Grogu's he's got some training, but he's still very immature for where he's at with the Force. So you could have somebody that would oppose a decent threat to them from that side of things.
Yep. Well, if any of those new stories do happen in some future Star Wars tale, you can be sure that we're going to talk about it right here on What a Piece of Junk. But we are not the only show that you can hear on the Fandom Podcast Network. And here to tell us about all those other great podcasts is Kevin. Take it away, Kevin.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blooded Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our Fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, thanks very much, Kevin. Well, we've only got a couple more pieces of Star Wars news this episode of the podcast. First and foremost, guys, we have a rumor about a possible announcement about a trailer for a potential Star Wars video game. Would you like me to add any more qualifying adjectives to that statement? Well, if you would, then you're in the right time frame, because this is how internet news works these days, apparently. But yeah, guys, rumor has it that the latest Star Wars video game is going to be announced at Star Wars Celebration in Japan this coming April. Now, that's not all that surprising. Celebration is often a place where Star Wars projects are announced, but this time, the surprising part is the rumor is that the Star Wars video game will be a real-time strategy game, which is a gaming genre that you haven't seen a whole lot of in the past few years. There was a time when I was in college in the late 1990s where things like Command and Conquer and Age of Empires, all of those, StarCraft, all of those things were all the rage, where you had sort of a three-quarter or top-down map, and you controlled a whole army of little units of different types with different special abilities. And your goal was to go find your opponent's base, defeating the fog of war mechanic to unlock portions of the map and have your little army fight their little army, while you also had an entire segment of the game that was resource management, so that you had enough fuel, Vespene gas, magic crystals, oil, to wood to build all of the stuff that you needed. Gold, Old Republic credits. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so Star Wars itself has a long history of video games, going all the way back to the Atari 2600, the first real home entertainment system in the era of antiquity at this point, let's be honest. But it also has a history of real-time strategy games. There was Star Wars Empire at War, which was a big real-time strategy type game for Star Wars. Of course, you had Star Wars Rebellion, which was where you'd kind of go and control things on a planetary scale and launch fleets from one planet to invade other planets to liberate it from the Empire or reconquer it from those dastardly rebels, and so on and so forth. This is the rumor from known video game leaker Tim Moore 222 on Twitter, erstwhile Twitter, now X, where he said, "I got some details regarding the upcoming Respawn Star Wars RTS game." So Respawn, of course, being the Electronic Arts subsidiary software company that is famous for recently making the Star Wars Jedi series of games. So we got Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and then a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Survivor is announced, but no particular release date has been set. If this turns out to be true, and there's a sort of a teaser or a preview for a new Star Wars RTS game at Celebration Japan, I'll be happy, because I love real-time strategy games. I played the heck out of StarCraft, all the Command & Conquer series, and I even played Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness, I think is what it was called, where you had the humans and the orcs fighting each other. And,
that was the expansion 2 for Warcraft 2.
Yeah, thank you. Where you introduced the concept of naval vessels, which I thought was pretty cool. And the other RTS game that I played back last century that was really neat was Dune, which I think they should relaunch with the new graphics based on the Timothy Chalamet Zendaya versions of the story. But yeah, I would love it, guys. Derrick, what do you think? Star Wars real time strategy? And did you play Empire at War or I think there was one called Force Commander that was on the mobile phone for a while.
Yeah, I did. I was Rebellion, right? The first one that came out back in the '90s, and I played the heck out of the game because I was the same thing as you. I loved Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, the expansions. I love StarCraft. I never really got much into like Age of Empire and all that, even though it's kind of the same thing. But obviously, I loved like games like SimCity, right? And SimCity
Yeah.
2000. That was my type of thing. Dinosaur Park Tycoon and all those fun resource management strategy type deal games. But Star Wars Rebellion, I remember I just spent so much time on it. It's probably one of the most games I played hour wise back in the 90s, prior to online gaming. That it was just MMOs and everything when EverQuest hit the scene. But back in the day, that was my game, and it was just fun to one, you could play both light side or dark side, right? Because that was not always something common in games where you could play the bad guys. But it was fun because you could build the large ships and have really good stuff. But then you had to do tactical things like go diplomacy. You could do ground battles. Wasn't as much. But then I never got a chance to do Empire at War. I really wanted to, but just never found the time to get into that one. And then whatever that mobile game was, whatever you said, I did play it that was probably one of the first games I actually played on mobile. And then like maybe 3 to 4 months, and then just got tired of it because obviously at that point it just becomes very pay to win with mobile games, and then eventually I just heard it got shut down anyways at some point.
Yes, it no longer exists. Right.
So unless if you're doing some ROM hack on a PC game that they're able to do that with, but otherwise, yeah, I mean it was okay, but it did feel a little chintzy with the way the version of it, right? It didn't feel like because all you did was just build like kind of the standard MMO or mobile games from that concept. So, but no, I'm super stoked for this because this is one of my favorite genres. Now granted, I'm disappointed that it doesn't, and I'm not saying it couldn't, but it doesn't list the Switch 2 on here from the thing. It only says for Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, and Epic Store. But again, I mean, literally just the other day, Switch 2 was announced anyways with their little reveal trailer. So the fact that this could get a later announcement to go on to Switch 2, because I'm only going to buy one console. I'm not going to buy more than one. Though I could buy it on PC, but to be fair, I mean, I just like playing it on a 75-inch screen, and I don't really want to have to play it on my 20-inch laptop.
You could hook your laptop's HDMI output to your 75-inch television. Come on, man. Don't be lazy.
I don't have enough HDMI connections. I've got all my other gaming systems and Roku and everything else attached to it. So,
yeah,
Nathan,
I used to do exactly that.
Yeah, we have known each other for the majority of my lifespan so far at this point now. However, the whole RTS fad was before we met each other. So, I don't know if you like real-time strategy games or not. Do you like the RTS genre?
I've never really played them. I played more turn-based stuff, like Civilization is very much a turn-based thing. You also mentioned SimCity, which is not really a real-time strategy thing. It is resource management and kind of city planning, but the real-timiness of it wasn't quite the same.
Watch out for those natural disasters, though.
Yeah, that's when you summon. Yeah. That's when you summon Captain Maxis, and he saves the day by punching the tornado.
My way of doing it. No, I never did that because I just cheated in a different way. I knew the funds cheat where you
if you get the cash,
you just get the cash. If you do it enough times, an earthquake comes. But an earthquake doesn't matter if you haven't built anything yet. So you do funds to get like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then, oh, look, we had a couple earthquakes. Okay, now we'll build our nuclear power plant and whatnot.
Yeah,
because we can afford all of that because we have $1 bajillion.
Right.
So who cares? And then I would turn natural disasters off.
Yeah.
Because basically,
that's the way
it was easy mode.
Easy mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you do regular mode and something bad enough happens, you can put in the cheat code to summon Captain Maxis. So like if a Godzilla or kaiju attacks your city, or there's a tornado coming towards your city, you can forget the code. I think it's just Captain Maxis, and he shows up and literally punches the tornado until it dissolves.
Well, that's cool. But yeah, the big thing I noticed about this is what Derek mentioned about it not being announced for Switch 2. But of course, Switch 2 was just announced earlier this week and is set to come out on April 2nd. According to the announcement here, according to the announcement of the rumor of the announcement is going to happen on April 18th through 20th, sometime during Star Wars Celebration in Japan. So the announcement won't actually happen until after Switch 2 is a thing. So it's entirely possible that they just didn't include Switch 2 because they didn't know about it. or at least they didn't want to spoil anything that they weren't supposed to be spoiling.
So are you willing to give it a try as a game?
If it comes out on Switch 2, and assuming I buy Switch 2, because that's still up in the air, depends on what games come out, then I would probably try it on that. I don't do as much on Steam, but I could potentially get it through that. But I'd be willing to give it a try.
I'm hoping that they allow for. You'd almost assume that there's some sort of play over the internet. But I hope that instead of just death matches or duels like we used to do back in the day on our college LAN, that's local area network for you kids out there.
Me too.
That's right. I would hope that they would do cooperative games. So it'd be fun to also Nathan and I could build up different squads to oppose the computer, or even we could do a 3-player game and have a what a piece of junk grudge match where Nathan and I decide to destroy Derrick. Or do we curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal? Pew, 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 pew.
Or maybe out of the top rope, Andrew will come in and help me and be against you two.
Yes. No. Anyway,
or Rita, somebody, I don't know, Joseph, I don't care.
So even though I've never really
backstabbing
played real-time strategy games, they do seem like the type of game that I would be good at and enjoy.
Yeah, because it's mostly resource management and then exploration.
Yeah, which are things that I tend to be good at, and that's the thing I tend to not be as good at.
Yeah,
but you don't have to do it. You just have to place them strategically, like you do your miniatures.
Right.
And you don't have to roll a dice, and hopefully you get it. You just
that certainly helps Scott, the not rolling dice part. Yep. Because I've seen Scott roll dice, and while I don't believe that it matters who's rolling the dice, usually it does when it's Scott.
Every so often. I just lost a game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Spearhead yesterday to Avery's Giants. He crushed my Lizardmen 14-9, and I couldn't roll higher than a 2 when my Carnosaur, the biggest dinosaur that I had, was attacking his giant. That was just chomp, chomp, chomp. Oh, I'm sorry, boss. I left my teeth at home.
It's like, I've got a big head and little arms. I don't think this plan
was well thought through. Yeah, exactly.
Use your tail. Too late.
All right. Well, we got one more piece of Star Wars news before we wrap up this episode of the podcast, and that is that there is once again a rumor that Dave Filoni's Star Wars crossover movie that we've affectionately taken to using shorthand of Heir to the Empire, its existence hinges on the box office success of Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu. This is not that surprising to me either, because you would think that pretty positive that Mando and Grogu's movie is the next Star Wars movie that's actually going to get released. We may have plenty of others announced
because they've
between then and now,
filming it,
but they've at least finished filming this, and it's moved beyond the announcement stage. And so almost anything that is going to happen for Star Wars post Mando and Grogu is really going to depend upon the box office return for that film. And so the idea being here that if that movie flops, they'll reconsider their plans and turn the crossover Heir to the Empire movie into a mini series that would be available on Disney Plus. Lucasfilm is reportedly going to play it safe with their shows moving forward, whatever that means, according to insider Daniel Richtman, as reported in the San Francisco Gazette. So, yeah, there was a big tease at the end of Solo about Darth Maul or Maul still being alive. Nothing has really come of that tease in the years since Solo, which are now 7 of them. Was Solo 2018? I want to say it was.
It's either 2017 or
May of
2018 because 2019 Rise of Skywalker was the last one we got, and that was 2019.
Yeah, it was May of 2018.
So we're approaching some weird moment where if they did ever follow up plot points from Solo, it would be weird, like making a sequel to Den of Thieves 6 years after. Oh, wait, I went to go see that on Friday night. So never mind. I guess that could happen. Den of Thieves 2, Pantera, a lot of fun. You didn't have to have seen the first one, but if you did, it makes a lot more sense. But that was 6 years ago. So unless you've done something weird like rewatch Den of Thieves, you probably won't get all the references in part 2. But if you like heist movies, we've been talking about heists all night long on the podcast. If you like heist movies, Den of Thieves 2, Pantera, makes the first heist in part 1 look like child's play because they robbed the World Diamond Center over in Europe. So take that, robbing of the Federal Reserve Bank. Anyway, so yeah, I guess they could do it. We've had a follow-up to movies from a lot longer chronological time difference in release. But I don't think they will. Like I said, I'm not that surprised that Mando and Grogu are going to have an outsized influence on every other Star Wars project. Because let's be fair, since the beginning of Disney Plus, Mando has had an outsized influence on every Star Wars project. And I was just discussing it with other Star Wars fans at the game store here in Rutherford earlier today. If you are a current young Star Wars fan, and I mean like 20-somethings and on down, not just children, The Mandalorian and Grogu are kind of your high water mark for Star Wars storytelling, because the first 2 seasons, man, that was epic, really peak Star Wars stuff. And Grogu has such an impact on pop culture. He was a balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, for crying out loud. That's the pinnacle. It still is, yes. That's the pinnacle of pop culture impact, you guys. I mean, he may be as popular as almost any other Star Wars character, barring like Vader, Yoda, and Chewbacca.
Well, just barring Vader, really, to be fair.
Yeah,
Like today's kids now, to your point, Scott, I mean, it's Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
I mean, probably even more than Darth Vader, but I mean, obviously as a pop culture reference, right? Because obviously most kids aren't going to get pop culture references anyways, because they're still kids.
Right.
But to your point, that, reunited the fans, right? That brought people in. I mean, I'll guarantee it's going to hit $1 billion regardless, whether it sucks or not, it's going to hit $1 billion.
Yep. Nathan, do you think it's fair to put that much pressure on Baby Yoda?
Fair or not, doesn't really matter. Financially, it's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
do we feel
it
confident?
Really matter what I think.
Like Derrick is confident that they're going to make enough money to make it happen. Do you feel confident?
I think they will, because as y'all mentioned, Grogu is the biggest thing ever. So they'll make money just because of that. All they have to do is slap Grogu on the marketing. People will come and see it.
Yeah. And it depends on what they actually rate it as too. If they rate it PG or if they rate it PG-13. They won't do R, but if they rate it PG or PG-13, because then we know that, okay, if it's PG, then that opens another thing for a lot of younger kids. Not to say that parents just take their kids regardless, but then you know what type of story you're going to get, because obviously it's not going to have as much violent action. Not to say there's not going to be action, but to me at that point, that almost feel more, very, very telling. I would imagine it's going to go PG-13, but again, they could really dumb it down. But again, that could bring in a lot of eyes if it's PG.
Yeah. All right, well, whatever happens on Mando and Grogu, we're definitely going to be talking about it on the podcast. But one thing we're also going to keep talking about on the podcast is Derrick's favorite part of the show, and that is, I think I probably need to rechristen this, what Star Wars merchandise are we talking about this week? Because
I don't have
I'm
a
not
shirt
wearing a
today.
Star Wars shirt. I've got merch to talk about.
How dare you?
I know. So since Nathan is the only one with a Star Wars shirt on, he gets to go first. What you got?
All right. Yes. I am welcoming you all to the indoor national forest, where the Wookiees all have to be accompanied by people wearing orange vests, because Peter Mayhew was indeed accompanied by people wearing orange vests during the filming of Return of the Jedi, so that people wouldn't shoot him thinking that he was Bigfoot.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
Such
you know
a great
what?
story. Star Wars Sasquatch.
I'm not gonna. I'm not done, because I have something just over here.
What? He has T-shirt and merchandise? Now I feel incredibly inadequate.
Well, I mean, this is more of a spur of the moment thing, but I happen to bring these so that we could play them at my parents' house. The Star Wars deck building games.
Yes.
These are great games. I love them. Y'all should go play them. Caleb Grace is really good at designing games.
He is indeed, and those are great games. All right, I have two pieces of Star Wars merch, one official and one entirely unofficial. First and foremost, I've used this mug on the show, gosh, probably for the past 5 episodes in a row. It was almost going to be my official Skeleton Crew mug, but it's the Star Wars Bones Coffee Terracotta Coffee Cup that has the Tatooine tiramisu logo on it, and I just realized my new webcam on this new PC is putting everything backwards. I gotta figure out how to reverse the reverse. Anyway, okay, good. It's Luke hanging out on Tatooine with his father's lightsaber, very much shorty robe Luke from Episode 4, A New Hope, and a fine, darn good coffee mug that is, because it's throne pottery, is dishwasher safe and microwave safe. So I use it to drink various adult beverages while recording the podcast, and then also tea and cold brew coffee. So big thanks to Bones Coffee. All their Star Wars coffee flavors are really good too, if you guys want to give that a try. And then also earlier today, Madison was over here helping me paint Warhammer models, and she was digging around for some old paint. Yeah, there you go, Derek. The Wookiee, what is it? Wookiee cookie.
Wookiee cookie.
Yeah. And we were digging around for paint bottles, and Madison's like, "Are these stickers for the show?" And yes, indeed, I still have some what a piece of junk of Star Wars podcast stickers from when friend of the show, Terry Lee, gave those to us years ago. And I still found some magnets. We probably ought to talk to Commander Kyle about doing some funky giveaway thing for people who want these, because we were supposed to give them out at conventions, and then the pandemic hit, and conventions became a difficult thing to do.
And then they got super expensive.
And then they got super expensive because inflation hit after the pandemic. And then it got harder to take stuff with you to conventions because there was all this security about checking your bags and blah, 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 blah. So, yes, I have quite a few stickers and magnets left over. All right, Derek, what do you got for Star Wars merch?
Yeah, so I pulled mine out, but I forgot it upstairs in the bedroom because I had another pair of socks I wanted to show you guys, different from last week's Wookiee Chewbacca version. So, but I've got some things that I didn't get to show you guys yet. And so I have a really good friend, Kyle Mullins. So shout out to Kyle, who occasionally does listen to the show, but maybe he'll listen to this. And obviously we're hour and 17 minutes in, so he probably already fell asleep at this point. But he does on his YouTube page, because he does a lot of things for box openings of cards, and he really likes the 2021 and 2022 Topps Chrome Star Wars Bounty Hunters or whatever.
Oh, trading cards. Okay,
yes,
rock on.
Actual trading cards, right? Obviously, we know each other from the Star Wars CCG Facebook group and stuff like that, because he does that as well on the grading side of things, right? With PSA and then all those custom labels I used to get from HGA and all that stuff. So, but anyways, he's a good friend. And we've done quite a few trades and stuff. So anytime we do a trade, he always sends me random extra stuff, which I don't complain. But anyways, one of the things that you get, because he also does like the Stranger Things version of the Topps cards and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But obviously they give you like eight cards in a pack now that charge you like $5 a pack, right? When they first come out and stuff, it's getting ridiculous price. But then they have like every version of the card has like 3 different versions, and then there's a foil version of everything, all those chase things, and then they have like 3 or 4 different subsets and all that stuff. But one of the things he has is called the subsets from the series is called Feared Mercenaries, and he's given me 2 out of the 3 of them. This is the common one I'll show you guys today, specifically since we were talking Mando and Grogu. So this is from season 1 and season 2. So the first one is there are 10 cards, and I'll show them real quick to the fans. The first one is Mando accepts a new mission.
Okay, yeah. So I would like to see the baby. Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
Yes. Then the Mandalorian hands Grogu over. So this is one of the
well,
first
hey, you got to
missions.
see the baby.
Yes.
Yep.
Then the next one is the Mandalorian rescues Grogu from the lab, and you got your good buddy Paz Vizsla there
Yeah.
with his riot gun laser. Then we got the first reveal: the Mandalorian saves Grogu from Moff Gideon when he first appears in season 1.
You have something I want. Yep.
Then we get one of the best cameos, in which I'm still waiting for his own spinoff series. Mando saves Mos Espa from a crate dragon. And we've got the Timothy Olyphant cameo.
Cobb Vanth.
Cobb Vanth,
Cobb
yep.
Vanth. There you go. Yeah,
So-
nice.
And then we've got Mando meets other Mandalorians. And this is when we first got our Bo-Katan in real life with Mercedes
Axe
Monet
Wolves
and whatever.
and
Wolf.
Cosca Reeves.
Yes. So, and then we have Mando meets Ahsoka Tano. Remember when that big reveal happened
Oh yeah.
with Morgan Elsbeth and everything that's leading into the Ahsoka series of Heir to the Empire? And then we had the other great cameo, which did get a spinoff, was Mando, Boba Fett, and Fennec Shand battle Stormtroopers, which was
Nice.
the Star Wars directorial debut of Rodriguez there
Yep.
from that episode. And then we get 2 more. Mando defeats Moff Gideon and wins the Darksaber.
Cool.
So you can see Moff Gideon with the Darksaber there and Mando standoff. And then last but not least, and this is where Mando then all season 3 had to redo his thing, was Mando says goodbye to Grogu. Because we all know what happens in the big reveal of episode 8 of season 2 when Luke Skywalker comes. And we get the touching moment of that. So I have another 10 cards from the other uncommon set, but I will save that for another day.
All right, cool. Well, if you guys want to get your own cool What a Piece of Junk merchandise, please check out our store for the entire Fandom Podcast Network over on tpublic.com. Just search up Fandom Podcast Network in the search bar, and you can see t-shirts, coffee mugs, mouse pads, iPad cases, anything that your little merchandise-loving heart desires will be there with our excellent logos on them. And when it comes to the rest of the Fandom Podcast Network, Derrick, where can people find us on the internet?
They can find us on our main master feed at the podbean.com through the FPNet on Podbean app. Obviously, any of the ways of streaming nowadays or downloading podcasts through Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Podbean, as we mentioned. You can find us on Facebook with What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, which is probably the most active way of getting a hold of all 3 of us there. But Scott,
now that Derrick has been unbanned from Facebook, thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. Look, I know you're upset about the whole TikTok thing, but you don't have to take it out on Derrick. Come on.
That was only a 3-day ban. That was escalated from the 1-day ban I had 6 months ago. So, but anyways,
I stand by my statement.
email whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. You can still hit us through Twitter at What Wars. Kyle runs that, but let's be honest, Twitter it's active, but we don't really utilize it anymore. And then Instagram through the major network of Fandom Podcast Network, hit everyone up there. But again, as we mentioned, right, we utilize the various podcasting platforms to stream and download us. Obviously, the most famous one is Apple Podcasts. Obviously, talking about leaving us a review, which is always nice when you're done utilizing which episode you just listened to. But Nathan, why would we ask the listeners to leave us a review?
Well, the main reason that we want people to leave us reviews is so that we know what we're doing well and what we could be doing better. What would you like to hear? But also, leaving 5-star reviews allows other people to find our podcast. It helps get the word out there so that people can come and listen to us. But most of all, we may have accidentally let some pirates take over our stash of old Republic credits. And, it takes money to run the Drunken Gungan. Sorry, Admiral Kyle, about losing the entire store of money. No biggie. Leave us 5-star review. It'll be okay.
Yes. Well, anyways, as we recover from this financial loss that something may never recover fully from, we will be happy to have you guys join us on the next episode of the podcast, as is our tradition now that the most recent Star Wars series is going on hiatus and perhaps done for good when it comes to Skeleton Crew. We'll be taking a little hiatus for new episodes of the podcast, but we'll be sure to announce when we're coming back on our social media channels. So please stay tuned for that. But until then, please always remember to respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.